Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Charles opened his eyes and sighed. There was screaming and breaking dishes in the kitchen again, and his mother was scolding his father again. He rolled onto his other side and tried to sleep. He didn't want to get up. He didn't want to see his drunken parents, who, apparently, had already found money in the morning and bought alcohol. It was the same day after day, and he was very tired of his parents being alcoholics. He didn't want to go to school. He almost didn't sleep all night listening to his parents and their friends sitting until late at night or songs and arguing. Then apparently fell asleep and then dozed off, and his stomach churned again from the cold. And he lay on his back, realizing that he probably wouldn't have to eat today either. How he longed to finally graduate and leave this house. He couldn't live here anymore. His parents didn't care about him, and he was a nuisance to them because he needed to be fed. And they had no money all the time because no one in the family worked. Every morning they went out to collect bottles, then went to the dump to see if they had thrown out anything worth selling. Sometimes they'd find something. And then they'd go to the UN commissions, and they'd give them money for the junk they were asking for. I told you I bought 2 bottles, but you hid one. And now you want to blame it on me. Mom yelled, and apparently threw something at Dad. She had such a habit, she couldn't swear for a long time, but tried to grab something heavier and throw it at the one she was yelling at. The only dishes left in the house were the ones that didn't break. The rest Mama Charles broke someone's head. I'll tell you again, I didn't take anything. You carried it all yourself. And when we got home, the first thing I did was make a glass for you to pour us some vodka in. So look for it yourself, because you're the one who lost the bag with the bottle. Why didn't you buy something to eat? We don't even have bread. If I bought bread, we wouldn't have enough for the second bottle, which I can't find now. At the word bread, Charles felt so hungry again that he groaned and turned on his stomach. Then he looked at the time and saw that first class had already started. He knew it was not good to miss school, but he couldn't go today in this condition because he was afraid he would get sick from hunger. Besides, they had a cafeteria at school, and there were always such smells coming from there that he always had a hard time holding back. So don't just sit there and shut up. Where could I have put the second bottle? I heard my mother's voice again. Where would I go when we never left the kitchen? Then it must be here somewhere, grumbled the father. Charles could not listen to any more of this dialogue. He jumped out of bed, quickly pulled on his pants, t-shirt, jacket, and jumped out the window into the yard. He didn't want to see his parents because they'd be bothering him with their bottle too, and he didn't care about that. He was walking down the sidewalk and thinking about where he could get some food. He heard a familiar voice. Why aren't you in school? He turned around. He was his class teacher, Adriana. He walked up to her, said hello, and then said, couldn't make it today. Parents are drinking again for a week. No food at home. And I realized that starving at school could make me really sick. Adriana always knew everything about everyone, so you could tell her everything. And the guys loved her very much because she always tried to understand them and get into their situation. This time, she looked at Charles sympathetically, and then she said, come on, let's go to my place, and I'll feed you. You're really going to faint from hunger. That's not good. Remember when I told you to go to child services? You didn't want to. So now you're in agony. I don't want to go to an orphanage. Do you think I'd be better off there? She sighed, realizing he was right. It wouldn't have been easier for him there. You're right. But it hurts me to see you eat 6 times a month. And I think I exaggerated that number. What are you looking at me for? Come on, I'll feed you. And I'll tell you something else. Let's not skip class, because you're a very bright kid. You're gonna get an excellent diploma. You can get in, get an education, and make something of your life. I understand, Adriana. I just couldn't go to school today. I'm exhausted. I understand, she said and slapped him on the head. She lived not far from the house where Charles lived. True, her house was very different from his parents' house. It was manicured by him and beautiful. Surrounded by a fence that was painted with green paint, there was a garden near the house where trees and flowers grew. True, now on the trees were just beginning to turn green, these leaves, because spring had just entered its rites. Why are you frozen? Come on in. Now I'll quickly feed you and run to school. And you, please, you have to study today. Do all your homework and come to school tomorrow. If things are so bad, tell me, I'll feed you myself. You know, I live alone. So come over anytime. Don't be shy. Charles, I really want you to do something with your life. You're a smart guy, and I'd be very disappointed if you followed in your parents' footsteps. No, I won't. I just want to graduate high school and then move far away from here and never come back. You understand, my parents don't need me. They value vodka more than their own son. While Charles ate, Adriana looked at him and thought that she would give anything to have a child too. A son like Charles. She had been unlucky in life. She married early, but life didn't work out, and they were soon divorced. She didn't want to get married a second time because she realized that it was hard for her to live with a man and re-educate him. She could not get along with her first husband. She was annoyed, for example, that he scatters socks everywhere. Dirty laundry does not clean up after himself dishes. When eating can fall on the couch with the food and watch TV. She couldn't stand it for long. And one day, she just kicked him out of the house. Her parents brought her up very strictly and instilled in their daughter that she could not have a child unless she was married. Sometimes she thought about having a child for herself, but then she remembered what her mother had told her about it, realized she couldn't do it. As the years went by, it was too late to even think about having a child, so she was left alone. She gave all her love, kindness to her children, because she realized that all that she had accumulated over the years could not be given to anyone else. Charles could barely contain himself not to swallow all that Adriana gave him without chewing. He tried to eat slowly, but he wasn't very good at it. He was losing it. Then he remembered where he was again. He'd pull himself together and try to eat slower. Here, I've packed you some bread, boiled eggs, potatoes for tomorrow. I think you'll have enough. And look, Charles, don't go hungry. Come to me. I'll always feed you. You understand me. Charles nodded and smiled heartily. He took the grocery bag and went home. He climbed into his room through the window, put the grocery bag in the closet, and lay down on his bed and fell asleep. Woke up. He looked at his watch in the evening and then remembered that he had to run over to his friend James's house to get his homework. They were good friends and were even going to go to the city together to enroll. Oh hey, why weren't you at school today? Or are your parents singing again? They haven't stopped singing. They used to take some breaks, but now they don't send me out at all. I was hungry, so I didn't go. To be honest, I was afraid I'd faint from hunger. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I've never been as hungry as I was today. Thank you, Adriana. At least she fed me. But I figured you didn't have time to study today. Here, I've written out all our assignments. I can't wait to finish school. I can't stand it anymore. James had another problem. His mom was remarried, and James and his stepdad didn't hit it off right away. They couldn't stand each other. Naturally, his mom would take her husband's side, and he would sometimes raise his hand to James, and James hated him for it. You're bringing me up again. I'm sick of it. I can't take it anymore. To be honest, sometimes I envy you that your people don't pay attention to you. You'll live your life in peace. No, I'm not. I live because mine are alcoholics, and that's worse. No, but I sympathize with you. But there's nothing left in the bag, and we'll finally get out of here with you and go to the city. Yeah, I don't count anymore. I talked to my mother. She's okay with it. She's tired of it herself. She loves him, of course, but I'm still her son. So she feels sorry for me. I understand her, of course. I'll leave. She'll be left alone. And my heart's not in the right place. But at least I know that her stepfather will stay with her, and the two of us will be fine. And mine probably won't even notice I'm gone. They don't care about me at all. We're unlucky with our parents. I'll tell you that. So I can't wait to get away. 'Cause I'm gonna run away from home for sure. Come and see me if you need anything. I only have one bed in my room, but I guess we'll figure it out. Charles came from a friend's house, and first thing he did was lose his clothes so he could go to school tomorrow clean. He had only one shirt and pants, which he watched carefully, realizing that he had nothing else to wear. His shoes he was always fixing, and then he would take his cobbler and cream and clean them to a shine. If you didn't do that, you could already see that they were so old and worn that they belonged in a landfill. Then, when the things for school were ready, he sat down to his lessons, realizing that tomorrow he would probably be questioned by his teachers. But he wasn't afraid of that, because he was perfectly prepared. Everyone marveled at him, how he managed to live with such parents, and not to skip school, do his assignments, and in general study for only A's. Most often students tried not to go to school, saying that they were unlucky with their parents, who do everything for them not to study. There were a lot of kids like that at school who had drinking parents. With Charles, it was the opposite. He tried not to skip school. His lessons were always ready. He liked to study very much. Adriana was pleased to see Charles come to school. He said hello to her and went to his seat. He sat next to Betty, the girl who was calm, quiet, and modest. They hardly spoke at all. And what was there to talk about with this theory, who was always afraid to look him in the eye? Another thing, Kathy was a companionable girl. She was always friends only with boys. She was also a very pretty girl. She knew it, but she took advantage of it. Charles, hey, why weren't you here yesterday? Did you skip school? No, Lenya didn't. I just had a situation where I couldn't make it. Why didn't James even tell you? We asked him yesterday, and he doesn't even know anything. Where is he, by the way? Or did you two take turns skipping school? He should be here. I went to see him yesterday. He told me he'd be there for sure. Probably overslept. James got to school, but he was late. When he entered the classroom, everyone realized he had a huge bruise on his face. Everyone immediately guessed that his stepfather was probably displeased again, and apparently, James began to argue with him. Naturally, that's what he got for it. James, who did that to you? Adriana asked. Yeah, I had a bad fall. James, don't lie to me. You know I can't stand it. Your stepfather hit you. James nodded and lowered his head. Why? What didn't he like this time? I told my mom I was going to go to school when I graduated, that I'd already made up my mind. And he told me that I should ask his permission first, and then decide what to do. And I told him he's nobody to me to ask him anything. So he got mad. Oh, I see. All right, I'll come over to your house tonight and talk to him. If he doesn't want me to go to the right place, he can control himself. Now, guys, open your books, because class has already started. Adriana was their physics and chemistry teacher. There was a teacher shortage, so they had to take a few classes. Their village was slowly dying out. Young people were leaving for the city. They didn't want to stay. And that's why there was a catastrophic shortage of teachers and doctors. After school, Charles, James, Christina, and a couple of other friends went behind the school to sit on a bench and chat. All right, guys, we're all going to town. When are we finally going to get out of this school? Christina asked. No one's changed their mind. You're what? Of course we haven't changed our minds. What's there to do? You think about it. Except to drink yourself into oblivion. I was talking to my father, and I realized that even if I don't get in, I'll look for a job in the city. But I won't come back here. You know, Slava, they won't hire you in town. And most likely, the military commissioner's office will take care of you much sooner than you find a job. So it's in everyone's best interest to get in. We need to stick together. It's better for everyone. You're right, Kathy. because we don't know the city, and it'll be very hard for all of us alone. But sticking together won't work. Where do you want to go to theater school? Why? Well, James and I are not going to go to theater school, which means we're not gonna be together anymore. Yeah, guys, it's a shame, but we all wanted to be together. Well, then the important thing is not to lose each other. See each other on the weekends to catch up on the news. I understand you're going to go to school with Charles. Of course, I'm just going with him. I know he'll always be there for me. Yeah, you guys, I'm gonna have to get in, 'cause I'm going home. No, I can't. I'm already living with them. They're alcoholics. I don't know how they don't get sick of this vodka. They won't get sick of it. Don't get your hopes up. My mom started singing too. I see every night she has a drink. I told her, Mom, don't do it. You'll look like someone else later. And she says she doesn't care anymore, so nobody needs her anymore. There's something wrong with our village. Everything used to be different here. And what's happening now? You can't live here. There's no money to be made. And I don't want to live like my parents. Charles came home and went quietly to his room, put his bag on the bed, and then went out to see what his father and mother were doing. The house was suspiciously quiet, and he always checked on them. Recently, their neighbor had died from vodka, so now he was afraid that it could happen to his parents, no matter how much he loved them. But it's still his father and mother, and he can't leave them, not while he's here. There was no one home, and he realized that they'd probably gone fishing, so to speak. Charles sneaked into his room, ate what Adriana had given him, and sat down to do his homework. He did his homework quickly. Soon everything was ready, and he was about to jump out the window and go to his friend James, as usual, as he himself climbed through the window to him and told him that he had left home. I can't live at home anymore. I'm exhausted. You know, he told me today that I'm not going to go to college. I'm staying here. I'm going to work at his base, and then I'll join the army. Can you imagine? He decided everything for me. What to do and how to live my life. I can't see him. And my mother is afraid of him and doesn't interfere when he starts to scold me. I told her where I was going, of course. She just nodded and didn't say anything. Look, is he interfering in your life? He's nothing to you. That's exactly the kind of father I need to sort out my own life to teach others. My mom makes more money than him, so he joined her to make a better life for himself. I think she's already regretting having him around. Anyway, I've left and I'm staying with you for now. That's fine. Just be warned, there's nothing to eat at my place. Everything my teacher gave me yesterday, I've already eaten. Don't worry, my mom gave me money. She knows how things work here, doesn't she? I'm sorry, but everyone knows about it. It's understandable. I can't help it if my parents are like that. Well, let's go to the store, get some groceries, and then we'll cook something. James stayed with Charles for a week. They went to school together, cooked meals together, cleaned their room, and did their laundry together. Adriana knew that James wasn't living at home yet, but she didn't say anything. At first, James was afraid that his stepfather would come over and chase him home. But a week went by, and he never showed up. Look, he's probably turned my mom against me too. He's just so pissed off that I don't listen to him, and he's always picking on me. Oh, come on. Forget about him. The important thing is that you show him your position, and that you won't listen to him. Exactly. Besides, I talked to my mom, and she told me to go to school and not listen to anyone. 10 days later, as the boys were walking to school in the morning, James was approached by his mom and told to come home. I'm not going back as long as he lives in our house. Not anymore, son. Kicked him out. I can't stand to see him messing with you. You're gone, and he's living in our house like nothing happened. How does that work? I couldn't stand it. I told him you should live here because it's your house. He took offense and said if I didn't pull myself together, he'd leave. So I told him I wanted him to leave. He packed up his stuff and left. So come on back, son. I'm not happy without you. Okay, Mom. I'll be home after school. I'll have to pick up Charles' things, but I'll do it in a jiffy. And you, Charles, come and see us more often, and you can live with us if you want. I know what's going on at home. Oh, really, Charles, come and help us. I'll have a big vegetable garden. My mother needs to dig it. Why didn't you care about anything? You and I will do everything ourselves. Charles nodded. He didn't care where he went, as long as it wasn't home. James was sometimes embarrassed when his parents got drunk and rowdy. For the rest of the school year, Charles stayed with James. After school, they'd have lunch and then go to dig the vegetable garden. It was a big area, so they didn't work as fast as they wanted. Then they would go back to the house and sit down to study. They had to prepare for exams because the quarter was coming to an end. Every evening, the boys gathered around the sacks of the new house and discussed how they would live in the city. Christina kept saying that she would probably go back if she didn't get in because she was afraid to live in the city. It's easier for you guys everywhere, but not for me. At first, I wanted to stay in the city, but then my mother told me such horrors that I even got scared. You know, Christina, maybe you should choose another profession. You know, where you want to go. Not everyone can do that. So, why don't you pick something else? You're gonna be stuck for a year. It's boring. Maybe you're right, Charles. But I want to be a famous actress, so you can look at me on TV and say that my classmate became a celebrity. It's understandable. We'll be proud of you. Just be aware that there are very few good actresses, and to achieve something, you'll have to work like hell. That goes for any profession. You think if you and Charles go into finance, you'll get money out of the sky. You're wrong. You'll have to work just like me, day and night. You're sorry. To achieve something, not only do you have to study, you have to work all the time. But I'm ready for it. The main thing for me is to leave and get into school. I don't want to come back here. Adriana gathered all the students in the class and told them that their studies were over and that in a week they would start their exams. It's up to you guys now. Don't let me or yourselves down. This is the most important thing for you now. Remember, you still have to get into college, right? And there, your marks will be noticed and conclusions will be drawn. So pay attention and don't be lazy this week, but try to prepare. Charles and James did just that. They spent the whole day singing over their textbooks, refreshing their memory, realizing that everything now depends on them. Should we make some cheat sheets? Asked Charles James. I'm getting a little scared. If they notice them, they'll kick you out. Adriana warned us. It's up to us now. Don't be afraid. You remember and know everything. You'll see when you draw the ticket, you'll realize there's nothing new. We've been through all this before. You're right, aren't you? Sure, but my heart's racing. It's not even the exams yet. What will happen to me then? I think I'll forget everything in fear. Don't be afraid. We'll go in together, sit together. If you don't understand anything, I'll help you. You'll see, you'll remember everything. Just remember, we have to do well because we have to get into the institute. The next week, on Monday, the exams started. The first day, James was very nervous, but looking at his friend, who was very calm, he pulled himself together and decided to take it as it came. Because with his excitement, he was making things worse. First of all, only for himself. Charles was as calm as ever because he knew he would pass. There was a reason he had tried his best all these years, no matter what. And so he did. He and James passed with flying colors. The prom was coming up, which Charles didn't really want to go to. What am I gonna do there? I don't even have anything to go to, and I'm gonna be the black sheep. You're all dressed up, and I'm gonna look like an idiot. Well, then I won't go. We'll just get our diplomas. We'll give flowers to our class teacher, and then we'll go home. We'll have to go to the city. You're right. We should go, but I need to work a little. I've already arranged it with Aunt Clara. She said she needs movers at the warehouse, so I need to earn some money or I won't be able to go. Mom said she'd give us money for the trip. James, your mom is a very nice woman. I'm just not comfortable. I live here all the time, so I'm better off on my own. Besides, I don't even have any decent clothes. If I come here in my shoes, they'll make fun of me. I'd better earn my own money. It's time for me to do things on my own. I have no one else to rely on. Every morning, Charles went to the warehouse where Clara worked. She was Charles' neighbor and knew how Charles lived. Yours still hasn't come. I don't know. I'm staying with a friend now. I haven't seen my parents for a long time, but he's probably drinking like he always does, and they've even forgotten about me, like I don't even exist. You believe that? I've been at James for so long, and they haven't even asked about me once. That's what we're getting at. God bless your life. You're such a good kid, but you've been through a lot already. What's a guy like your parents for? God gives them children. I don't understand. To suffer or something. Charles didn't say anything because he himself had asked such a question many times, but he didn't find an answer. For 2 weeks, Charles had been working as a loader. Charles didn't resent him. She paid him well. And then she told him that she had gotten some nice suits, men's suits and shoes. I put a couple of suits aside for you after you're done here. You should try them on. I've also got some shirts and stuff for you. You'll be there. As you go, whatever's good enough to put away. Yeah, I don't need much because I don't have enough money and I need to travel. I'm saving up so I can go to the city. And there, you have to live there. I'm telling you to put aside everything that suits you. And then we'll figure it out. Charles shrugged his shoulders, but I did not argue because I realized that it was useless to sit and tum. When he expressed everything and arranged it neatly, he went to wash his face and then tried on everything she had left him. Everything that Charles had left him fit perfectly. Charles liked everything very much because he never wore new things. He was always up to hours for something. His parents never bought him anything, and kind-hearted neighbors gave him everything they didn't need. But Charles was happy with everything because he didn't have to choose, and he couldn't go to school naked. What a handsome boy has grown up, said Clara when she went into the back room and saw Charles in his suit. Yes, I like everything too. I just can't buy everything. I think a suit is too much. Just pants, a shirt, and some shoes. I don't know if I'll have enough money though. Well, you can have it all. I've already paid for it. It's my gift to you. I feel sorry for you. And I don't have anyone, so I can afford it. Besides, you're a nice guy. You've cleaned up my warehouse so well. It's a pleasure to work here myself. You deserve it, and I hope it works out for you. You'll get in and you'll learn, and you'll be a wonderful person. Don't forget us. When you come here, remember your home walls. Realize that you are very angry with your parents, but you should visit them. No matter how they are your relatives. In the evening, Charles went home and thought that when he would finally get on his feet and earn a lot of money, he would be sure to thank those people who helped him. Goodness should not be forgotten. Soon Charles and James went to the city and enrolled in the institute. After they found out that they were enrolled, they had to return home. The dormitory was still closed, although they were told that as soon as they came to study, they would be immediately allocated a room. As non-residents, what are we going to do in our village? I'll die of boredom, said James, looking at Charles unhappily. Well, what are you going to do here? The money will run out soon, and we'll have to go back anyway. So I'll work a little longer because I'll have to hope for the fall. Look, that's true. I'm going to work with you because my mom's working hard enough for me as it is. At least this way I can help her out a little. You look good in your clothes. I didn't even recognize you when you put on that suit. That's what it means to be a well-dressed man. You wouldn't believe it in my whole life. It's the first time I've ever worn new clothes. I didn't even know how good it felt to wear something new and unworn. Who cares? I, for one, don't know what you're talking about right now, because you've never been after anyone before us. Your mom bought everything for you. I never had that. Charles and James spent the rest of the summer working in the warehouse. Slaga could not be pleased with the guys. If then Charles put order there, arranging the right goods, now they made repairs there, beat the walls and painted the floor and repaired the roof. And Clara was thanking them all for it. Not only did she pay them well, but she got Charles some imported jackets and boots so he would have something to wear when the cold weather came. She's definitely here for you. How does she feel about her son? Noted a disgruntled James. She gave you a jacket like that. I too, for example, want the same. Don't be jealous. I'd rather be happy for me. I've never had a normal jacket. You've always seen what I wore to school. You've got some really nice stuff. So not Archie. James finally talked his mom into buying him a jacket like Charles. He couldn't understand why he wanted one so badly, but he couldn't help it. Charles laughed at his friend and said that he hadn't expected him to do that, and that James was like a little boy who saw a beautiful toy in a store and begged his mother for it. Before leaving for the city to study, the boys met with their classmates who were less fortunate than they were. Christina was among them. She cried looking at the boys and said that next year she would definitely enroll and achieve to become a famous actress. And did you hear that our quiet Betty got in too? Who'd have thought it? She was afraid of her shadow, and then she went to the city and got in. She's going to be a teacher. She said she'd come back here and work at the school after she graduated. But everyone else wants to go to the city. And she, on the contrary, wants to come back here. To each his own. You're right to point out that she's young, so she realizes she can't survive in the city with the kind of character she has. You need strong people there. They're like her. After their first year, Charles and James came home for the vacations. Charles stayed at James's, but he went to his parents' house. They didn't recognize him. When he told them he was their son, they demanded money from him. He turned and left, realizing that he might as well not have come. He stopped by Clara's as usual to see if she had a job for him. So you, son, would have a vacation. You're on vacation now. I need money. You know it's expensive to live in the city. Of course, we get a scholarship, but it's not enough all the time. Is there any work for you, Sonny? You're my handyman. So come back tomorrow, and I'll start my duties. Charles worked at the warehouse again. In a month, he had already met not only his classmates, but also his teachers. He was especially happy to see Adriana, who told him that he had come a long time ago, but had never visited her. I'm sorry. I just don't have time. I went straight to work when I got here. I come home. It's late. Was it inconvenient to disturb you? It's not inconvenient for him to come over tonight. And bring James with you. Christina's coming and Betty. She's back from the city too. She's following in my footsteps. Good girl. Come and have a chat. We'll have a little reminiscence night, so to speak. Charles came home from work that evening, washed up, and then told James about his conversation with the teacher. So, are you going to the reminiscence party? Of course I am. I've been at home all day like a fool. I've been alone. Mom's on vacation. I'm bored alone. You work all the time, and you can't get out at night. Who else is coming? Our classmates Christina, Betty, someone else I didn't specify. Who cares who's there? We'll chat, and then we'll go home. I have to get up early tomorrow morning for work. Adriana was very happy when she saw the guys. She set the table on the veranda. It was a warm summer evening, and it was nice to drink tea in the fresh air. Charles was very surprised at Betty. She had changed a lot. She was different. She looked better. She was already confident, and there was no trace of her quietness. Christina, on the contrary, as Ornella looked ungroomed, and kept telling everyone that next year she will definitely enter the theater. Imagine, 2 points short. That's unlucky. But next year, I'll definitely get in. Adriana listened to her and shook her head disapprovingly. Then she turned to Charles and whispered. The girl started drinking. Slowly, but every day. She'll never get in. That's the way she went to get in. Only I think they probably wouldn't even let her in. Look at her. What she's done to herself in a year. She won't go to work. She sits at home. And in the evenings, she's with a bunch of men. So they got her hooked on the bottle. I feel sorry for her. I've talked to her so much. It's no use. She won't listen to anyone. I was even scared when I saw her at first. I didn't even recognize her. Then I realized it was Christina, our beautiful optimist. What happened to her? I don't know what did it to her, but you can see what she's like now. She's a mess. We have to do something about it. Shouldn't she go to the hospital? Have the doctors put her on a drip? Or what do they do in cases like this? It's not an IV, it's a headache. Do you understand? That's where it all comes from. Why does she give up on herself so much? I don't understand. She dreamed of being an artist, of course. I told her that not everyone can be famous, but she wouldn't listen to me. Now she's in agony. Betty, how are you? I don't recognize you at all. How do you like school? I don't regret choosing this profession. No, it's been my dream since I was a kid, and I'm glad I got in. I'm looking at Christina now and thinking that it's better to be simple, that it's better to be a simple teacher than a failed celebrity. What's that mumbling about me? Asked Christina, angrily, looking at Betty. Look at you and look at me. I'm 1,000 times better than you. I've got men running after me in droves, and you're still a gray mouse. Girls, stop fighting. Besides, Betty didn't say anything bad about you. You shouldn't say that about her. Oh, Adriana, you don't smoke either, do you? What a teacher. If you only knew how much you bore me with your moralizing. Can't you take it? I've always hated you, because it's your fault that I failed. You've always been so supportive of everyone but me. You're the only one who told me I couldn't make it. I was the only one you didn't believe in. And that's just the way it is. Everyone's doing well except me. Even though I was the best in school. Handsome, smart. But you were jealous of me and you blocked my way. What are you talking about, Christina? I've never been jealous of you and I always thought you'd do well. You just picked the wrong profession. That's true. Although you would have made a great doctor. You could have been a great accountant. But it's your own fault for going down the wrong path. The guys were silent, listening to Adriana. They couldn't understand what had happened to Christina, why she was acting so defiant and angry. Charles realized that it would only get worse. So he approached Christina, leaned over to her and said, "Come on, Christina, I'll walk you home. It's time to go to work tomorrow, and on the way we'll talk." Christina at first wanted to object, and then looked at him carefully drunkenly, smiled and said, "But let's go, Cavalier. By the way, I didn't think you were so handsome. The castle used to seem so, and now it's just a different person." They were silent almost the whole way. It became a little chilly, and apparently, the alcohol began to be weathered. Christina spoke more clearly. "I don't know what's happening to me. I look at you. You are all in business. You study, live, and I exist. I came this time to enroll. And they told me at once that I had nothing to do there. I looked at myself in the mirror and realized that this year I'm very strong. My mom is sick, always nagging at me that I did not sit at home, and went to work. So I went and got a job at the motor pool. And all the men work there. You know how it is. So in the evening, we have a beer or vodka with them. After a day's work. That's how I got used to it. I even had an affair with one of the chauffeurs. But why would he want me like that? Just for a walk. And they only want to marry people like Betty. You can't imagine what they do to them when she comes here on vacation. When she comes here on vacation, men forget all about me. I feel bad. Listen, Christina, but it's good that you realize all this. It's not too late to pull yourself together, reconsider everything, and start living. You couldn't do anything. Come to the city, finish some courses to work. Go and see for yourself how you will do everything, and your life will change. I look at you, Charles, and I wonder how you grew up to be such a good guy. With parents like yours. They're total alcoholics. It's like you're not their son at all, because you didn't want to live like them. And you, Christina, if you don't stop drinking, we're gonna turn out like us and our parents." A year passed after that conversation. The boys came back for vacation, but Christina was not in the village, and no one knew where she had gone, as Adriana told them. After that meeting, when Charles went to see her off, she quit her job, packed her bags, and left. Didn't say where. Charles was glad that Lenya had listened to him and had not stooped further. He was glad she had done that and hoped she would do well. After the institute, Charles and James went to work in a newly opened firm. They realized that they would not be hired anywhere else. They had just finished their studies. They didn't have much experience, but they were pleased that they met such an entrepreneur who surrounded himself with young and very promising people. Already in 6 months, the firm began to bring in a good income, and the guys were happy. They could already afford to rent a nice apartment in the center of the city, and Charles was still saving up for a car because he did not like to push in public transportation. James didn't have money. He spent it on all sorts of things. He could just go to the store and pick up ties, socks, and shirts. Charles didn't understand his obsession with clothes. Besides, he didn't wear them all, and they were just sitting in his closet. "Why do you need all this stuff? You don't wear anything anyway." "Well, you can have what you like, right? That's what I always tell you. But you forget that we have different tastes. I can't wear something that bright. You know that. I can't stand bright colors." "Oh, come on. We're young. You wear black like you're in mourning all the time. You can't do that. Girls don't like that. Trust me, my friend James. I'm not interested in girls right now. In fact, I love what we're doing. I don't get it. You don't like what we do. What, are you out of your mind? Where else can you and I make this kind of money? Trust me, we can make a lot more if we start our own firm. I've done the math." Sam's not very honest with his clients. He takes their orders and half the money. But instead of quality material, he gives them fake material, which is very poor quality. Keep in mind, sooner or later he's going to go bust, and then we'll be out of work. I suggest we rent a place and start making money ourselves. Of course, I downloaded his customer base a long time ago, so we'll have customers. I realize it's risky, but it's time for us to start our own business. And if we burn, I haven't thought about that. Why should we burn if we do business honestly and don't cheat anyone? And remember, people like it when they don't get cheated out of their own money. The next day, Charles started looking for premises. He knew he had a gift and that he could negotiate with anyone. And so it came to pass. The owner of the premises gladly gave him the keys, took half the amount of money, and gave him time to get the business up and running. Charles bought another computer and got to work. He advertised his company, which he called Jupiter, and waited for calls. James was calling everyone, telling him that their boss was gagging. He's very unhappy. He's gone on sick leave. He says he has some problems, and he can't solve them without your help. And I even know who gave him those problems. And it's me, or rather us, because you and I have a firm that's up and running. Orders are pouring in, so I had to find people to help me out. So why don't you take a sick day too, because I've got a lot of work to do. Look, then I'll leave right now. The chief's out of town and said he won't be back till tomorrow. So why should I sit here? I'd rather start working with you. A year later, Charles was able to buy an apartment and a car. Their firm prospered and expanded. James was happy that now he could afford absolutely everything. And the first thing he did was to take a ticket to Spain, where he had always wanted to go. Charles was not against it, knowing that if his friend had something in mind, it was impossible to change his mind. After that conversation with Charles, Christina decided to pull herself together and leave her hometown. She realized that if she stayed, she would continue to live like this. She saw how Charles looked at her with pity and realized that it was not a good thing. She had always liked him, and she wanted to do something to make him pay attention to her, but for some reason he'd never been interested in girls. At least not during her high school years, even though all the guys from her school were after her then. She came to the city, rented an apartment, and took a makeup course. She was very good at makeup and hairstyling, and soon she was working in a beauty parlor. It wasn't bad. The only thing she couldn't stand was the owner of the salon. It's understandable as a woman. She was already not young. Her suitor, who at that time was 10 years younger than her, began to care for Christina. She told him not to pester her because, firstly, he was not her type, and secondly, let him live with his mom, who was babysitting him. She did not understand what he said to the salon owner. Apparently, something like that she does not give him a pass. And she fired her and told her not to dare to go to other salons because she would do everything to keep her out. She actually made good on her threat, because wherever Christina went, they wouldn't hire her. She studied like that for a month, and then packed up and went back to the village. There she opened her own salon, where she did haircuts for men and hairstyles for women. The income, of course, was small, but she had enough to live on. She also lived with her mother, who became increasingly drunk and often ill. A little under the spear of money, Christina sent her to a sanatorium to be treated. Christina sat in the hairdresser's shop and read the newspaper. There were no people, and she was bored, realizing that, as always, Monday is such a day that it would be possible to go to work and not go out. Suddenly, she saw a beautiful foreign car pull up to her salon. A guy got out of there, looked at the sign, and went inside. "Hi, can I see you?" said Charles, smiling, and approached Christina. Charles surprised Christina. "Listen, I don't recognize you. Are you like this?" "Like what?" "Well, it's obvious that you have money. You must be a big businessman." "I don't say I am. But things are slowly developing. So I decided to come to my home village, so to speak, to relax. I left James in charge. He just got back from Spain. He's rested and tanned. Now let him work. I'll stay here for a few days." To be honest, I didn't think about where to stay, because I've already been to my parents' place. It's such a nightmare there. I didn't want to stop. "Hey, why don't you come stay with me for a while? My mom sent my mom to a resort. Let her rest a little. Maybe she'll quit drinking, and you and I can sit and talk. I just need to go to the store for groceries, because there's nothing tasty in the house." I wasn't expecting company, to be honest. "Well, look, Christina, if it's convenient, I'll do it. Honestly, though, I thought you'd be married by now." "No, I haven't. To be honest, I don't want one yet. And there's no normal ones around here. Anything goes straight to the bottle. I don't like it. We have girls getting married. And if their husbands start drinking, they drink together. So they're getting drunk." "I see. Well, let's go to the store. I'll drive you, and we'll get what we need. To be honest, I'm pretty hungry. It's just from the road. Is it okay if you close your beauty parlor now?" "It's okay. It's Monday. You can see it's empty. So, all day long. So I would have left soon anyway." At the store, Charles picked up some groceries. Christina said in surprise when they got into the car. "Look, Charles, you've bought so many delicacies. We can't afford such things here. You really are a very rich man." "No, Christina, I'm not rich yet, but I'm trying to be. To be honest, I still remember my childhood very well. The hunger I was constantly experiencing, and I made a promise to myself that I would never go hungry again. I would do everything to live a normal life." "Have you been to your parents' house?" "I have." "What's the use? They're really down in the dumps. I was thinking of taking them to the hospital and getting them coded. But they say they have to agree to it. But they don't. For them, vodka is life." Charles and Christina talked most of the night, drinking wine and snacking. They didn't realize how they'd ended up in bed. In the morning, Charles woke up, looked at Christina lying next to him, and smiled. He remembered how they had danced, then kissed, and then they had gone into the bedroom and couldn't help themselves. He got up quietly and went to wash his face. What had happened had shocked him a little, of course, because he had never liked Christina. But apparently something had come over both of them yesterday. Maybe it was the wine, maybe it was the memory, but it had turned out in a way they hadn't expected. After he had washed his face, he went into the kitchen and put the kettle on. He needed to get some breakfast and head back to town. He didn't want to linger here because he realized he needed to be at work. He had had enough rest for one day, and he was full of energy again. Christina woke up and looked at the spot where Charles had slept. There was still an indentation in the pillow from his head. She turned on her side and inhaled the scent of perfume. Pahan was, of course, amazing. Plus, he was a very cool lover. And what they got up to at night, Christina would remember forever. She wished Charles would stay a couple more days, but he had told her yesterday that he would probably leave because he had business to attend to. She thought about what had happened the night before and secretly wished that he would change his mind about going and stay a few more days. She got up to throw on her robes and walked to the kitchen. Charles was making sandwiches. A mug of hot coffee was already on the table. He was freshly shaved and looked great. She sighed and realized he wasn't going to stay. And after breakfast, he would probably leave. And he looked at her with a smile and said, "Good morning. It's okay that I'm a little like you here. It's okay. Yeah, it's fine. Really, I should be the one cooking. I was your breakfast. So you just had to wake me up. And you were sleeping so sweetly. It was a shame to wake you up. Besides, I did fine on my own. I live alone. I get breakfast. I don't have anyone to cook for me. So I'm used to it. It's not a problem for me. I know I'm used to it myself." They had breakfast. Then she went out to see him off. He gave her a light peck on the cheek. Then he got into his car and drove away. She watched him for a long time. Then she went into the house and cried bitterly. How she wished he had stayed with her, or at least invited her to stay with him. But he didn't. Charles did not pay any attention to what had happened yesterday. Then she wiped away her tears and decided not to write, thinking that he probably liked it, too, and would come back soon. Charles arrived at work in the evening. He had a slight headache after the drive, but he didn't think much of it. James was very surprised to see his friend in the office. "Why is it so early? I thought you spent at least 2 days there." "No, I couldn't. It's so dreary in there. Besides, I only got to talk to the tape. The others either aren't there, or they're full. So frankly, there's nothing to do there. I kind of regretted going there in the first place." "I see. Then let's get to work. Besides, I told you you should go abroad. It's so beautiful there. You'll love it. By the way, you and I have been invited to a charity event by some organization. But I think we should go. Maybe the right people will be there. Do you know, it can be very rewarding to meet people like that." "All right, let's go. Just when?" "Not today. I'll remind you tomorrow. By the way, I hope you have a tuxedo." "I do. Don't worry about it." "That's great. Now, I gotta run. I got some errands to run and check out." "Nothing major. Just in case." Charles didn't ask anything because he knew that if it was serious, James would tell them. The next day at 7:00 p.m. Charles and James drove up to the building where they had been invited. "So I'm not here for a while today because I must have gotten a cold yesterday," said Charles. "I don't feel well, so you're here all right today. You should rest more often. You went to our village, and to be honest, you spent more time on the road than in our village. Is that rest?" Charles didn't have time to say anything because he saw a girl so beautiful that he was breathless. She was like a fairy tale princess, so petite that it seemed to him that just a little more and she would disappear. "Don't be like that. Her daddy might not like it. Do you even know whose daughter she is?" "Jack of the Free Bank." "Not the Free Bank. It changed its name a long time ago, I think, but I can't remember the name. I think it has an English name. So I'm telling you, if you translate it from English, it's freedom. But that's not the point. Anyway, you're looking at a daughter, a billionaire, and she doesn't need people like us. And a father wouldn't give his only daughter for the likes of us." Charles looked again at the girl, who also paid attention to him, then turned away and went among the guests to look for the host of the evening. In the middle of the evening, Semin, who had organized it all, was talking to Charles, when they were approached by a respectable man who said, addressing Charles, "Young man, I've wanted to meet you for a long time. I've heard a lot about you and your firm. I want to tell you that you're good, and I have a business proposition for you. I'm Jack. What's your name? Nice to meet you. I'm Charles. You know, Charles, I've gotten a lot of praise for you. They say you do honest work and honor your contracts. I always enjoy doing business with people like that. Nowadays, everybody tries to work hard. Cheat, 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 cheat. I do not like it. And I myself started the same way, as you understand that only by honesty and integrity. I can do business by following your path a little bit. I realize that you are very much like me, and even our friends are the same. We trust them, but they look the other way, because they don't know what to do because of their greed. I don't know what you're talking about." At that moment, James jumped up to them, realizing who Charles was talking to. "Naturally, I wanted to meet this man myself. Tom," ignoring James, continued Jack, "that your friend was just covering up your honest name, doing everything just like those people you and I can't stand. That is, he wants to make a quick buck and cheat, thinking that no one will ever find out about it." Charles turned to James, who had turned pale and speechless. "But that's not what this is about. Although my advice is that you shouldn't have a rat like that as a friend. Now let's go to that table. I have a business proposition for you." After talking to Jack, Charles looked for James to have a serious talk with him, but he was nowhere to be found. Apparently, he'd gotten cold feet and gone home. But Charles was not upset. He was pleased because the deal they had discussed promised such profits that Charles felt a little dizzy. He realized that the banker was a serious man, and Charles trusted him because his security service had gotten all the information about him before talking to him. Charles did not linger any longer, but packed up and drove home. As he approached the house, he saw James sitting on a bench waiting for him. "Charles, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for things to turn out this way. It's just that I have a woman, I'm in love with her, and she sucks money from me like a vacuum cleaner, so I had to do it. That's fine. You betrayed yourself for some chick. That's weird. If I were you, I'd rather send that woman away, but I wouldn't betray my friend. I've already realized that. To be honest, I'm glad you found out about it. I would never have admitted it myself, and that's why I was tortured all the time. By the way, what did Jack offer you? Yes, I don't know whether to tell you this stuff or not. Otherwise, you're checking behind my back again, and I'll have to answer for it. Of course, you can't do that here, because they'll be watching you closely, and if you make a mistake, I'll have to answer for it. Besides, you've ruined your reputation with your moves, and that's Jack's deal. He doesn't want you on this project. What am I supposed to do now? You can keep working with me, if you want, of course, because I'm gonna be busy with something else entirely, and I won't have time for our main work. So it's all on you. You don't let me down." "Thank you, Charles. It's a lesson I'll remember for the rest of my life, and I won't let you down again." Charles became very close to Jack, and when he did his work, the banker was very satisfied and said that he would only use his firm's services. In addition, he began to invite him to visit, and Charles got acquainted with Jack's daughter. Cindy was a beautiful girl. She was not spoiled, as it might seem at first glance, was very intelligent, educated, and had her own business store brand name clothing. A month after they met, they started dating. And after another month, Charles proposed to her and she accepted. Jack was very happy for his daughter because she had always wanted to have a son-in-law like Charles. He saw that this guy would go far because he reminded him of himself in his youth. After the wedding, the newlyweds went on a cruise on a white liner. Cindy had always dreamed of such a trip, and Charles decided to do her a favor. In addition, he himself was happy to get away from work a little and give time to his beautiful wife. Christina now waited every week for Charles to arrive. It didn't, but a month passed and he never showed up. But she found out she was pregnant. She knew perfectly well that it was Charles' child. And at first she was very frightened, but then she was happy. She realized that if Charles knew that they would have a baby soon, he would marry her immediately, and they would have the family Christina dreamed of. The important thing is that he gets here on time. You can't see the belly yet. It'll be embarrassing, and there'd be gossip in the village. But as the days passed, month after month, Charles never showed up. Already the belly was visible, but not very much. But Christina began to wear more spacious clothes so that no one would suspect anything. One morning she was going to work when she saw a cab that pulled up to Aunt Varia's house. James got out of the car, laden with packages and bags. He was holding a huge bouquet of flowers. It's understandable. The son came to congratulate his mother on her birthday. Christina hurried to him to talk to him. And of course, to find out about Charles. "Christina, hi. Where are you going?" asked James cheerfully, trying to close the car door. "Let me help you, because you have your hands full." Christina rushed to him and closed the door of the cab. "I came to congratulate my mom. Yes, I couldn't miss such a celebration. Why are you standing there? Come in, let's talk a little. I won't be long either. I have to go back tomorrow. You know, work." "I understand, sure. Okay, let's talk. Why don't you take a cab instead of your own car? Last time Charles came by in such a cool car. I thought you had one." "No, really. I'm afraid to drive. I had an accident in the city once. That was it. I can't drive." Aunt Varia wasn't home. Apparently, she was at work, so James took over. He cut the appetizer, put the kettle on, and invited Christina to the table. "Listen, Christina, it feels like you've put on a little weight, and you look beautiful, very becoming." "Thank you." Christina blushed and then asked why. Charles did not come. "Or he has a lot of work." "Yes, we have a lot of work. And he could not come because he recently returned from a wedding trip. I'll show you a photo from the wedding. You'll see who he married, and you won't believe it's the daughter of the richest banker in the world." James said something else, but Christina didn't listen to him. The only thing pounding in her head was the thought of Charles getting married. She looked at the pictures and it took her breath away. The bride stood in such a gorgeous dress and was so beautiful that Christina realized she was not even a match for her. Charles was standing next to her. He was just like the bride, groomed, handsome, and they looked really well together. Olechka ordered her dress from Milan. She knows it well, because she has her own store with clothes from Paris. Of course, her father helped her to open the store, but she did well on her own. "Yeah, good for her," Christina whispered. Then she got up and said, "Well, I'll be going. It was nice to see you. I have to go to work and open my salon." "Oh, okay. Well, if anything, come by tonight. We'll talk some more." Christina nodded and went outside. Tears were running down her cheeks, but she didn't even notice them. She was thinking about what she had just learned. What did she really expect after that night? Charles wouldn't come back and offer her his hand in marriage. No, he would never do that. And that's what she'd realized at the time. She was just hoping for something because she loved him so much, and he'd forgotten about her as soon as he'd left and married someone else who suited him better. And now she was pregnant and had to raise the child on her own. She didn't want to go to work, but went to the store and bought a bottle of vodka. She wanted to get drunk and forget about everything. For a week, Christina didn't come out of the drink. She realized what she was doing was wrong. It only made the child feel bad. But she couldn't give it up, because only in a drunken state it was a little easier for her. Then, as she sobered up, the pain returned, and she began to hate not only the memory of Charles, but also the child of his, who was essentially innocent. Her mother could see that something was happening to Christina, but she couldn't figure out what. She felt sorry for her daughter and decided to talk to her. "Why don't you tell them what's going on with you? Why are you acting like this? There's nothing to drink again. You're about to turn into an alcoholic. I don't care anymore." "Drunk," muttered Christina. "Still ahead. Only shame awaits me." What shame? Her mom didn't understand. "And such, that I pregnant baby on a walk, and now I will raise it myself. Because daddy doesn't need us. He married someone else, and he doesn't even think about us. Nothing. People will talk and forget, and you'll have a baby soon. So don't drink. You're doing him a disservice. I don't want anything anymore. I don't want a baby either." But the mother managed to convince Christina not to drink anymore and to think about her health. She convinced her that there was nothing wrong. Besides, she's not 15 years old to be judged by people. You're about to turn 30, so no one cares about you. And you don't have to explain to everyone what happened. Besides, I'm here to help in any way I can. We'll live. Don't worry." Charles was happy. He never thought he'd be so lucky to have a wife. She was a wonderful hostess, and she was the best at her job and the best at her job. And at home, she was great at everything. After work, Charles would fly home to hug his wife and then have dinner with her. The only thing that alarmed him was Cindy's fragile health. She was so fragile, delicate, that sometimes hugging her, he was afraid that not calculate the force and hurt her. Besides, she had headaches all the time, and sometimes she was so pale that he was afraid for her. "I'm strong. I've just had this since I was a kid, and doctors told me that as I got older, it would go away. But so far, I haven't seen any improvement. Besides, I feel fine. So you don't have to worry about me. My dad took me to the best doctors because he was so worried about me after my mom died. He was so overprotective. He used to make me so mad sometimes. But then he got used to it and started to give me more freedom, seeing that I don't look like my mom and probably won't get sick like her. He must have loved his mom a lot, because from what I understand, he never remarried after she died. Yes, although I did. Although I've asked him myself more than once, I thought it would make him feel better. But he disagreed with me and said he'd never meet a woman like Mom again, and he doesn't need other women. I understand him well, because when you love really much, you don't need anyone else. Charles and things went uphill with the help of his father-in-law. People found out about him and started coming to him. People very rich. His firm was now the best in town, and they only wanted to work with him. James had learned his lessons, and now he did everything right, realizing that it was better not to deceive a friend, because it would only benefit him, not worry and shame. Christina gave birth to a baby girl. The child was born healthy. However, one could not say that about the mother. There was a feeling that the girl took all the strength from her mother. First time Christina almost did not get out of bed. She refused to breastfeed, and all day long she lay staring at one point. The child was always watched by her grandmother, who scolded her daughter and said that it was not allowed, that she has to find the strength to move on with her life. What is going on with you again? We've had this conversation before. It's not the baby's fault. It's just the way things are. There's nothing you can do about it. They named the baby Lisa. Grandma liked the name very much, and since her daughter didn't care about the baby, she decided to give her the name herself. Christina eventually got tired of lying down all day, and she began to get up slowly. And then she decided to go to work. That's the right thing to do. You'll be better off around people, and you'll soon realize that everything is fine. Besides, look what an angel we have growing up. Isn't that beautiful? I don't know what's beautiful about it, but I don't want her. I hate her. Christina tried to distract herself with work for a while, but then she went back to the bottle. Now she often had company in her salon, mostly men, with whom she sang and told them about her miserable life. So why didn't you go to town when you found out you were pregnant with Charles? I should have gone and told him. Where would I have found him? Well, he's in the papers all the time. His firm, his family, and his father-in-law. He's a banker. And Charles is a high-flying bird himself these days. Listen, why don't you go into town and tell him all about it? Let him help you now. He's got money to burn. He's what they call him now. An oligarch. What are you talking about? She'll be kicked out of there. We can't get close to such people. They don't give a damn about us. And I'm not going. Christina reasoned drunkenly. Because I'm proud and I don't need his money. I'll get my daughter out without him. And he can live there with his wife and father-in-law, a banker. I'm a free man. I can do what I want. And I don't need him. He won't be happy. I know it well because it's me he's destined to be happy with. But he never realized it. But when he does, it'll be too late. Cindy had been married to Charles for a year. She was happy with her husband, saw how much he loved her and reciprocated. Her only concern was why they still had no children. She really wanted to have a baby with Charles. But so far, nothing had worked out. After another test, when she was convinced that she had failed again, she decided to go to the hospital. The doctors gave her tests to take and then told her to wait a while. While they checked everything out and told her what was wrong with her, it wasn't until the evening that the doctor called her in and informed her that her health was very fragile and that it was not recommended that she give birth at all. What are you talking about? I'm not fragile. I can carry a baby. You don't have to tell me that. You should tell me how to get pregnant. But it's up to you, Cindy. But I'd advise you not to take your advice. I just told you I want to have a baby, and it's up to you to help me. If you don't, I'll probably tell my father, and he'll find a way to deal with you. The doctor did not argue with her, but prescribed vitamins, which she had to take. I think after this course he'll be fine. Only I strongly recommend it. But Cindy wouldn't listen to him any further. She had gotten what she wanted, and that was enough for her. For a whole month, she took her vitamins, keeping time, trying to take everything on time. Charles saw that she drank some medication and even read the name, what it consisted of. Then he realized that they were just vitamins that strengthened the immune system, and I calmed down. After the pills wore off, Cindy began to look forward to finally getting pregnant with her baby. This waiting was driving her crazy. She became nervous and anxious. Charles tried to entertain his wife, seeing that she could not find a place, became angry and aggressive. One day, after Cindy lost her temper again, he told her, "That won't do. Sweetheart, you've never been like this before. Tell me, what's the problem? Maybe I can help you. I'm really sick of your mood swings. I've got to do something about it, because I'm not an Iron Man either." Cindy looked at her husband and cried. Then she told him everything and cried even harder. Charles listened to her and laughed. "My darling, don't you think you're already in my position? Because what I'm seeing right now is just right for a pregnant woman." Cindy rushed to the bathroom, and 5 minutes later came out with a shining face and hugged her husband. Lisa turned 1 year old. She was already running around and helping her grandmother around the house. True, she called her grandmother Mama, and her mom called her Christina. Christina hardly lived at home now because she couldn't see her daughter. Kelly was very worried at first, and then she gave up and started raising her granddaughter on her own. But the fact that Christina abandoned her daughter was half the problem. The worst thing was that she continued to drink. Now she was out of work and lived with a man who kept company in the evenings. At first, Kelly tried to talk some sense into her. Her daughter told her to sleep at home because it was unseemly to behave like that. But Christina didn't listen to anyone. She didn't care about anyone, and she didn't care about herself. Charles was very worried about his wife when she was already 6 months pregnant. She was admitted to the hospital, and he only then learned that the doctors did not recommend her to give birth. He was outraged. That was the first time he had a big fight with his wife. "How could you hide this from me? I don't understand. Aren't we husband and wife? Aren't we supposed to trust each other? It's just that if I'd told you, a baby would have been out of the question." "That's right, because I don't want to risk my health. In this case, you were only thinking about yourself. You didn't care what I thought. When the fight was in full swing, the father-in-law came in and wanted to stand up for his daughter, not understanding why his son-in-law was going off the rails. You don't understand. She deceived me. She only lied to you because, you see, she needed a baby. And the doctors told me it's not only dangerous to her life, it's dangerous to the baby's life. Why didn't you tell us any of this? Why didn't you consult the father or me? It's true, daughter. How could you do this to us? I mean, look at your mom. She died after she gave birth to you. She got worse and worse every day. There was nothing I could do about it. Now you want us to lose you too. But Cindy was adamant. After the doctor came in, he said he wanted to talk to Charles and Jack. I'm sorry, but I didn't realize your wife and daughter hadn't told you anything. I was really surprised that you were so calm about it all, but it all makes sense to me now. You weren't aware of it, but now all we can do is wait. Cindy will stay in the hospital until she gives birth. Let her be, according to your observations. I hope everything will turn out okay. Sometimes miracles happen. In my experience, however, such miracles have not yet happened. Charles went to the hospital every day to see Cindy. He wasn't angry with her now, of course, because he realized that the job was done and he just had to wait. I dread to think what might happen to you. Do you realize that? Is your father not feeling well? He's not feeling well. He's got an ambulance outside his house all the time because his blood pressure's always skyrocketing and his heart is racing. And Lizia kept silent, realizing that words can't help, and she didn't want to say anything. She felt her strength leaving her every day. True, she did not tell anyone about it. Even the doctors were afraid that they would tell her to get rid of the child. Charles also saw that his wife did not look well at all, but he thought that the pregnancy was affecting her so badly. He had once heard a woman tell another that pregnancy sometimes makes a woman beautiful, and sometimes it makes her a mess. Apparently, Cindy had had a case like that. Charles received a call in the middle of the night saying that his wife had gone into labor and was in labor. He had to come right away. Charles didn't want to call his father-in-law so as not to alarm him. But then, remembering his nature, and that he would never forgive him if he didn't let him know, he sighed and dialed Jack's number. They arrived at the hospital at the same time without saying anything. They took the elevator up to the 5th floor and went to the emergency room. There they were told that they had to wait a little while because nothing was clear yet. Time went by and the doctors still didn't tell them anything. Jack kept pulling out Validol, putting it under his tongue and clutching at his heart. Maybe you should go home, Charles asked him. You don't have a face. Something, son, would make me feel worse at home. I understand, because I wouldn't go either. I don't know what's gonna go through my head. Then we'd better wait here. But if you're in pain, don't be impatient. Tell me right away. I'll get you a doctor. The doctor showed up an hour later. 2 hours later, he came out frowning, and looking at him, Charles realized something was wrong. Your wife is in a coma. We tried, of course, but there's nothing we can do. Let's hope she pulls through. But it's not all bad news. You have a son, but his legs are injured, and he'll probably never walk again. Charles froze and couldn't say a word. A noise brought him out of his stupor. He turned around and saw Jack slumping to the floor, clutching at his throat as if he couldn't get enough air. The father-in-law was dead. 2 days later, he never regained consciousness. Charles was even a little glad that Cindy did not know about it, although she herself was now between life and death. The child was still in the hospital under the care of doctors, and Charles was preparing for the funeral. In between, he was making his son a nursery and looking for a babysitter who could watch the baby. In the meantime, he had taken over all of his father-in-law's business, his bank, his stocks, and so on. Charles thought he would have gone crazy during those days if it had not been for the help of James. He was always there, doing everything Charles told him to do and keeping an eye on the firm. After his father-in-law's funeral, They drove over to Charles' house for a few drinks to talk. Look, I feel like I'm in hell. I never thought I'd feel this bad. I was so happy before. I thought I was gonna be okay. I'd have a baby. My father-in-law would retire and take care of my grandson. Now he's gone. My wife's in a coma. The baby's born disabled. What have I done with my life? Not like this. Where have I skipped God? That he's punishing me like this. Don't say that. God doesn't punish us. He gives us trials. And in your situation, it's just nobody's fault. It's a coincidence. Most likely, if Cindy had told you the truth, a lot of things could have been avoided. But I guess that's your fate. There's nothing you can do about it. When the tests were 9 days old, Charles got a call from the hospital saying that Cindy had died. He couldn't take it anymore and burst into tears. Lisa came home from school and went over to her grandmother's house to check on her after she had a stroke. She couldn't get up and couldn't speak, but she understood everything. Lisa was already in 7th grade and was able to do all the household chores on her own comfortably. After Christina died, her grandmother felt very sick and went to the hospital. While she was away, Lisa stayed with her teacher Adriana, with whom they had a very interesting conversation. Lisa, did your mom ever tell you who your dad was? No, my mom tried not to talk to me at all. But one day I heard her come home drunk and talk to my grandmother, and the name Charles came up, and that my mom still loved him very much. My grandmother then asked her about Brecker, and my mom said it was him. I thought so, because it looks a lot like my dad. Look what I'm about to show you. Adriana stood up. She took out a photo album and some newspaper clippings. Look, this is your daddy, Charles Brecker. He's a very rich man now. He's in the papers all the time. He does a lot of good things for people. He has a son, but they say he's an invalid. His wife died, gave birth to a child, but she didn't survive. He's raising his son alone. So, that's my dad. Yes, Lisa. Only the worst part is, he doesn't know anything about it. I don't know why your mom didn't tell them. But that day, I remember he came to our village to visit his father and his mother. They had been drinking heavily and had been dead for a long time. So he and your mom were at your house then. Your grandmother was just going to a sanatorium. And as far as I know, Charles spent the night at your mom's house because his car, in which he arrived, was parked in the yard until morning. And when I came out in the morning, I saw him driving away, and Christina was walking him out. My grandmother always told me that my mother loved only one man. That was my father. That's why she started drinking when she found out he married someone else. But I don't know the details. They didn't talk about anything like that when I was around. Okay, don't tell anyone about it either. Maybe you'll decide to meet your father later, but I don't think it's any use. A guy like Charles doesn't care. He's got enough problems of his own with people like us. Mason was 11 years old. He didn't go to school. He was tutored by teachers at home. He's used to it. I have nothing against it. He had his mother's temperament, just as calm. Only Charles saw that his son was very often sad. He had a complicated relationship with them. He didn't accept them for some reason. They tried their best, but they never managed to find a common language. Mason ignored them, disobeyed them, and generally did everything to make them leave and not stay with him for a long time. Son, you understand, I'm at work all day with you must be someone you know that you have very poor health. If something happened, you wouldn't even have time to call an ambulance. Not only was Mason born with bad legs, but when he was 5 years old, he got asthma. And now Charles was very afraid for his son. I'm not such a little boy anymore, Dad. So please don't patronize me. And those babysitters you keep bringing into our house, they're not trying to look after me. They're trying to please you. Do you understand me? I do now, but you can ignore it like I do. You know very well that I love only your mother, and I'll never marry again. I know, Dad. And when I look at her picture, I see that she looked like an angel. You're right. And when I first saw her, I thought she looked like a fairy princess. I'd never seen a woman as beautiful as her before. Lisa believed that Grandma would get better. She couldn't even think that anything could happen to her. She knew she couldn't be alone. Besides, if Grandma died, she would be taken away to an orphanage. After all, she's only 15 years old. Lisa tried her best, but her grandmother was getting worse and worse. She kept calling an ambulance. They gave her shots and shook their heads. Lisa could see that it was no use, and most likely her grandmother would never get better. She sometimes went to Adriana to cry and talk to her, only she understood her and said that everything would be all right, that her grandmother was strong and that she would get through it. After these talks, Lisa felt better and went home to give her grandmother another massage, boil some soup or porridge and spoon-feed her. Then she would take a book and read aloud to her, knowing that her grandmother could hear her perfectly well and therefore listen to everything she said and read to her. Day after day passed in this way. But as they say, the disease does not spare anyone. And soon Grandma died. After the funeral, Adriana took Tanya to her house. So what, Tanya? You're already 16, so they won't take you to an orphanage. I've spoken to the child welfare authorities, so you'll finish 11 grades at this school, and then you'll go to the city to go to college. Understand, Lisa, you're the only one left, and you have no one else to rely on but yourself. Lisa realized this herself long ago when her grandmother fell ill and everything fell on her shoulders. But she wasn't afraid. She realized that as long as her grandmother was alive, she couldn't do anything. Now she felt very lonely, and in her mind she had only one thought: to find her father and confess to him that she was his daughter. Let him not accept her, but she would feel that she was not alone on this earth. Mason was angry at his new babysitter again, and when Dad came home that night, he said he didn't want Miranda in the house. What's her problem this time? She told her friend on the phone that she would do anything to stay in that house. She described to her how we live, and then she said she wanted to woo you and marry you. I told her I'd heard everything and that I'd tell my father. So she first began to persuade me not to tell you anything, and then she got angry and almost hit me. That's it, son. It's out of the question. If she doesn't show up tomorrow, I'm gonna fire her. Mason turned and went to his room. He had lied a bit, of course, because Miranda wouldn't dare even lay a finger on him, but he didn't like her at first sight. And what she'd been counting on the phone with her friend today for almost the entire day was pure truth. Mason had always wished he had a sister or brother, that they were a little older than he was, that he could talk to them, and they would love him simply not out of Daddy's money, but because they were related. But this, alas, could not happen, because he had no mom, and Dad was not going to marry a second time. Sometimes, of course, he wanted his father to meet a woman who would be like his mother, but then he remembered how other aunts can't stand other people's children, and immediately realized that nothing good would come of it. Charles himself was already tired of the fact that he could not find a decent nanny. He didn't want to hire older women. Because at first, of course, he had older women with experience working for him, but his son was not interested in them. They quickly grew tired of his curiosity, not realizing that a child who could not walk was thus filling the void he had formed in his soul. He saw that Mason needed a mother or sister with whom he would feel comfortable, but there was nowhere to get one. And so the babysitters changed almost every day. He didn't know which agency to call anymore, because he had tried almost everything, and no girl was right for them. He sighed and called his friend James, hoping that at least he would have some advice. Hey, James again. Listen, I've got another problem. We're out of the loop again. Look, Charles, maybe we shouldn't do this. Your son's not a little boy after all. Fine, he can get by without a babysitter. Besides, he's not home alone. You have Molly around all the time, so don't worry. I'm not worried. Molly's in the kitchen all the time. What if Mason has a seizure? Plus, he's always dropping things in places he can't find. That's something you have to watch very carefully. Look, James, I can't lose my son too. Do you understand? Of course I understand. Okay, I promise I'll think of something, but not until tomorrow, because it's too late to even make a phone call right now. Lisa went into her room and went to her closet to get her bag and put her things in it. She had already finished school and was going to go to the city to enter the institute. She gathered her documents, took her mother's and father's school picture, and put it together with her passport and certificate. She didn't have much money. Adriana gave her some for the road. She said that if she didn't get in, she shouldn't linger, but come straight home. You realize it's dangerous for a girl like you to be alone in the city. There's a lot of bad people out there. Yeah, well, just like everywhere else, except in our village, no one will hurt you. But in the city they can. From the train station, Lisa went straight to the institute. She knew the address because they brought brochures to the school in the form of advertisements so that they could choose where they wanted to go. She decided to try to enroll in the foreign languages department. She could speak English and German very well. Adriana told her that she would probably not succeed and that she should choose something easier. But Lisa didn't listen to her and decided to go and apply there. When she got off the bus, she saw that her purse had been cut and all the money she had was taken out. She realized that now she couldn't go back, but she hoped that if she got into the institute, she wouldn't go anywhere, but would try to think of something. But she failed her exams. She went outside, not realizing what to do or where to go. She remembered that she hadn't eaten anything for almost a whole day, but she didn't have any money. And to make her hunger not feel so strong, she decided to go to some public garden so that no odors would taunt her, and so she wouldn't feel so hungry. She had to spend the night there on a bench. She woke up early in the morning because she was very cold. She took few things, but not because she didn't want to bring much with her, but because she had almost nothing. When her grandmother had fallen ill, all her pension had gone to food and medicine, and she hadn't bought anything for herself for a long time. She took her bag and went wherever her eyes took her, just to warm up a little. It was the third 24 hours of Lisa's wandering around the city. She was terribly hungry. She hadn't slept well. She was cold all the time and had only one thing on her mind. What was she going to do now? Realizing that she could do nothing without money, she sat down on a bench and cried bitterly. Charles left the office and looked around. He had to go to the bank, but he couldn't get the thought out of his head that his son was home alone and that they hadn't found a nanny for him. He was on his way to his car when he heard sobs. He turned around and saw a girl crying. Apparently, something had happened to her. He wanted to keep walking, but something stopped him. He went up to her and asked her, "Did something happen to you? Did someone hurt you?" Lisa looked up at him and answered, "All my money was stolen, and I can't go home. I didn't get into college. I failed my exams. And now I don't know what to do. Do you want to earn some money?" Lisa gave him a frightened look and shook her head. "You misunderstand me. I have a disabled son, and he needs to be looked after all the time. He will have a lot of fun with you because he is an inquisitive and intelligent boy. I will pay you well for this, and you will not need anything. I'm just warning you that he's lying a lot. And quite possibly, you haven't been with us long. Still, I think it's worth a try. Besides, if you don't succeed, I'll give you the money anyway, and you can go home." Lisa wiped her tears and looked at the man more carefully. She recognized him immediately. "My name is Charles, and yours?" "Liza. But as Lisa, don't you agree?" Lisa remembered what Adriana had told her about Charles, and that his son was disabled. She realized that she would soon see her brother, even if only by his father, but still. The first thing Charles did when he brought Lisa home was to show her her room, and then he looked at her and said that she should probably start her duties tomorrow, because she looked very sore and tired. "Now I'll get a doctor to see you, in case you're sick, and then I can't let you see my son. Then our cook will feed you, and you lie down to rest. And tomorrow I'll introduce you to my son. I'll introduce you to my son tomorrow." After the doctor left her, Lisa showed her bag and put her passport on the bedside table. a photograph. Then a woman came in and put a whole tray of delicious food in front of her and left. Lisa ate and immediately lay down on her bed and fell asleep. So, you didn't even look at her passport. James was surprised when Charles told him everything. You surprised me. I know there are plenty of con artists out there. And you bring the wrong person into your house. Yeah, she's young. She's still a little scared of the world. Well, I'll get my passport tomorrow and ask Rick to find out all about this girl. Early in the morning, before going to Lisa's, Charles went to the cook and asked her what she thought of the girl. Oh, Charles, poor girl, she must not have eaten or rested for a long time. As soon as she ate, she fell asleep. So sound asleep that she didn't even hear me pick up the tray of plates and leftovers. Charles nodded and headed for Lisa's room. He knocked, but no one answered. Then he opened the door and entered the room. Lisa was sound asleep. He didn't want to wake her and was about to leave when he noticed a picture on the nightstand. He picked it up and frowned. The picture was of him and Christina. They were 16 years old at the time. The man looked at Lisa again, took her passport that was on the nightstand and walked out. He couldn't understand what it all meant. So he immediately turned to Rick. Soon the information was already lying on his desk. It was Christina's daughter and his daughter too. Rick told him everything in detail. He was a master of his craft. Charles always wondered how in such a short time he managed to find out everything about a person, even things he sometimes didn't know about himself. After he had learned all this information, James came to him, told him everything, and he replied, "And you're not afraid?" "I don't get it. What's there to be afraid of? It's my daughter. What if she's trying to get back at you? You set it up on purpose. But she's not stupid. She knows she can't do anything to you. But that's how she got to Mason. What makes you think she's gonna get back at me?" Well, think about it. Her mother gave birth to her, but she didn't love her, because she thought when you found out about her daughter, you'd marry her. But then she found out you were already married. And you know, she found that out from me. I noticed at the time that she seemed to have put on weight, and now I realize she was pregnant at the time. She was raised by her grandmother. She probably told her about you, told her how bad you were. You're the one with all the luxuries, and you don't mention your own daughter, and you think she's gonna open her arms to you like that? No, she's definitely here for revenge. Charles raced home. His mind was filled with worse thoughts. He was afraid for Mason too, that if she told him all this, there was no telling how he would react. He flew into the apartment and went up to his son's room, but he didn't get there in time because he heard voices. "I wanted to meet you very badly. I don't have anyone but you. My mom died, then my grandmother. To be honest, I understand you very well, because I had almost no mom either. I remember her well, of course, but she hated me, and I never understood why. But I was always reading the papers about my daddy and thinking that someday I'd see him and tell him I was his daughter. You know, Mason, I was really afraid that you wouldn't accept me. I mean, I'm basically nothing to you." "No, you're not. I knew when I saw you that you were my sister because you looked just like my daddy. Can't you see that?" Charles listened to the conversation and cried because he remembered how he had done wrong to Christina, and his daughter had grown up without his help. Then he wiped his tears, came into the room, and asked cheerfully, "Well, children, are you? I see you have already met."